Hello my ghouls and goblins, and welcome back to the fog of Top 5 Scary. I'm your casual crypt keeper Taylor. Now I love a good museum. A good one to me has at least one T-Rex skeleton and a room where you can press a button to make some light turn on, or maybe you touch something and your hair stands up for science or something. Well, sadly none of the museums I'm talking about today are anything like that. These museums are filled to the brim with haunted artifacts, ghostly sightings, and scares way bigger than the price of admission. So come in my ghouls and goblins. Enter if you dare and make sure to leave through the gift shop as we take a look at top 5 haunted museums that had to be abandoned. Some of those might be metaphorically. Have you ever been to any of these? Would you like to? Shout out down below, my travelers of the unknown. Number 5, the John Zaffis Museum. For someone like John Zaffis, opening a haunted museum was always in the cards. It was practically destiny. Few people can claim to come from a legacy of haunted museums, but Zaffis can, since he's the nephew of Ed and Lorraine Warren, America's most famous and oftentimes controversial demonologists. Growing up with a large fondness for his aunt and uncle's work, Zaffis developed a love of the paranormal from an early age and saw fit to try and carry on his relatives' work after their passing, opening his own collection of haunted relics the same way that the Warrens did. And what a collection of weird relics Zaffis has picked up. I'll shout out a couple of the cooler ones. The highlight for me has got to be this sword that was used to conjure black magic, and the sword is in like all of the promotional imagery, so it's gotta be pretty good. Check out this photo of Zaffis where he looks like a dark wizard who's also a fantasy author. Among the blade are things like a cast iron skull that was used in occult rituals, plenty of haunted dolls and idols, an ornate elk skull thought to be used in something evil, and loads more. Zaffis does point out on the website in the frequently asked questions section not to worry too much about being exposed to this stuff, as everything that's brought into the collection is blessed before taking residence. Although they do make a small warning on the website that there is a teeny tiny small chance that any residual evil might attach to you in the museum. So I don't know, make sure to wash your hands with hand sanitizer or holy water on the way out. I can't not include this by the way, but the website also states that if Zaffis believes personally that any of the items in the museum have become too evil or too haunted to remain safe for public display, he throws it into an unspecified body of water. So if you're looking to start a collection of slightly used haunted relics on the cheap, I'd just check out the surrounding bodies of water to the museum. Now unfortunately, John Zaffis' museum is currently closed. Hey, this list was about ones that had to be abandoned, right? Can't come as too much of a surprise. But for those who are hoping to get a good up-close personal look at these cursed relics, Zaffis says he's been searching for a new location for the collection. Hopefully somewhere with some good ventilation, you know, really let all that evil air flow. And hey, if you're looking for more videos about haunted museums, haunted objects, haunted dolls, haunted everything really, we've got all more of that in spades. So stay subscribed to Top 5 Scary, keep the screams coming all night long. Let's keep going. Number 4, the Museum of Medieval Torture Instruments. Pack up the whole family and make sure to stop by at the gift shop for the Museum of Medieval Torture Instruments. Don't worry, there's something for everybody here to enjoy. Make sure you take home the miniature guillotine. One quick look at their website is particularly illuminating. Our main product is emotion, boldly proclaimed as their slogan. Yeah, well, agonizing pain is definitely an emotion, so I can't disagree there. The Museum of Medieval Torture Instruments really is exactly what it says on the tin. It's a massive collection of real historical relics and replicas serving to highlight some of the most disgustingly creative works of engineering ever invented. The kind of stuff that would make Jigsaw and his funny little puppet blush with anticipation. The museum's goal is to remind us just how truly unimaginably cruel human beings are capable of being to each other, and the lengths to which we will go to attain such horrid ambitions. The phrase, "those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it," comes up a whole lot on the museum's frequently asked questions page on the website, which is good. So come, learn a bit from such classics like the Rack or the Brazen Bull, so you don't accidentally end up repeating those. I don't think I can even possibly describe what either of those horrifying things do without getting this channel permanently flagged. So if you're curious, maybe take the worst Google trip of your life, or go up and visit the Museum of Medieval Torture Instruments. They've got locations all over the states for your pleasure, and there's even one in Europe, but I'm pretty sure that's a different one. The one I'm talking about right now is the American one. The one in Chicago even offers a ghost hunting tour, as some guests believe there are residual spirits tied to some of the more grisly equipment kept in the dungeons. Guests are invited to spend the night on their own accord or with the safety of a tour guide to try and uncover any of the spirits that are said to be still living there, including an old executioner named Thomas who loves his work so much he just never left. Sheesh. nearly 1,000 years, and he still doesn't take a day off. Some people just love to have their nose to the grindstone, or to forcefully shove someone else's face into the grindstone. To each their own. Number 3, the Penang War Museum. I think it's a very good sign that your museum is a friendly, welcoming place. If you Google it and the first results are an article called The Horrors on Ghost Hill, and a listing for an IMDb episode for a series called I Wouldn't Go There, featuring your museum. It's either really hurting or really helping the tourism there. Well, if those warning signs weren't enough to deter you, enter the Penang War Museum, my little ghouls and goblins. It's been described as one of the most haunted spots in Asia, flat out. The Penang Museum is built atop the grave of an old army fort built by the British in the 1930s, but was taken control by the Japanese in the late 30s in World War II, and used to house prisoners for as long as the prisoners lived, which was, usually not very long, if the site of the guillotine is anything to go by. After the end of the Second World War, the place had become totally abandoned, until it was retrofitted to become a museum, and serve as a reminder of the grim reality of war and its costs. The whole place kind of has this eerie, abandoned ghost town vibe as you walk through tunnels and old bunkers, serving to try and replicate what it would be like to actually work and spend time in a place like this while it was functioning. Given the very grim nature of the content and the site itself, which was home to so much bloodshed, death, hatred, and all the worst parts of our souls, it's no surprise that the museum has an infamous reputation as a spot for paranormal activity. Guests have reported seeing strange sightings, unusual shadows, and feeling chills as they walk through the bunkers. But all of this begs the question, would ghosts even be scarier than the actual truth of this place? Now, I've never been, but from what I was looking at and gathering for this, it seems to me like the true horror of the Penang Museum is that it's a reflection of some of the worst parts of the human experience. A reminder of what happens during wartime and what people do to one another. This place doesn't need stories of spirits. It's haunted enough as is by the memories that will forever be tied to it. Number 2, the Mutter Museum. Mutter is the German word for mother. That's your fact for today, so you can tell your Mutter that you learned something from this video. Well, this isn't a museum for moms or about moms, although they're more than welcome to come. The Mutter Museum in Philadelphia isn't quite like the other museums on this list. It's not particularly known for being paranormal or haunted, but rather it's a collection of medical oddities and curios all arranged behind cabinets in a very clean, professional manner. It's not known for vengeful spirits or anything walking the halls, but rather just home to an incredible amount of very creepy things in jars. Every picture of the place looks like something out of a mad scientist's lab, a background of a B horror movie set, that one weird place from that one Harry Potter movie, maybe I'm remembering that wrong. Amputated limbs float in jars next to organs, fetuses from all sorts of animals you can imagine, and more bones than you could possibly shake a femur at. They got skulls of all kinds. They got skulls for days. They got an entire wall dedicated solely to the skulls of criminals, and all sorts of broken skulls in disarray, eaten by tumors or other lovely diseases. If you're looking for skulls, they have got skulls. They've got a collection of famous remnants, Albert Einstein's brain, if you want to see if some of that rubs off on you, Grover Cleveland's famous tumor. Well, we all love Grover Cleveland's tumor. Pack the whole car up. Let's go see that. You know, fun stuff. Now, guests who visit the Mutter Museum do pretty frequently complain of feeling dizzy and uneasy while wandering through the collection, but whether or not that's because of some poltergeist or spiritual influence, or because you're wandering through a 6,000 square foot room looking at hundreds of brains, bones, and disembodied organs in jars, is up for some debate. I know just reading about this thing already makes me feel kind of squeamish, makes my stomach feel all churny. I wonder if they have a little cafe in this one, like most museums have. You think anybody's eating there? And number 1, the Museum of Death. The Museum of Death. Well, I wonder what sort of topics they enjoy covering at the Museum of Death. I bet they have an absolutely illuminating look at pre-Raphaelite art of the late 19th to early 20th centuries. They don't? What? No, at the Museum of Death, opened in Hollywood in 1995, which was opened by a married couple with the intention to make people happy to be alive. Whew. How do they accomplish this? Do they show you pictures of whiskers on kittens and raindrops on roses? No, of course not. It's a collection of everything to do with death. Bones, skulls, coffins, ancient mortician's tools, executioner's equipment, and a whole lot more. Amusingly, the owners have said their goal is not to scare anyone with this museum. That's not what their museum is about. Now sure, they play videos of autopsies, and they have footage and imagery from incredibly grisly and stomach-churning real-life true crime cases, like artifacts from Charles Manson's family, or some some of Jeffrey Dahmer's personal effects, but they don't want to scare you. The museum is there to show death in its brutal, unedited honesty. The owners themselves describe it as a commemoration of life. And I gotta be honest, I'm making it sound worse than it is, but it definitely does sound interesting. And the grimmest parts of me are definitely more than a little curious to check it out in that morbid sort of way, because it sounds cool. Probably a great date spot to take a goth girl, I bet. The museum does kind of embrace its sort of twisted reputation and really runs with it. It hosts Black Dahlia costume contests where guests are judged on who's got the best post-mortem Black Dahlia costume, which is something. It's not thought to be as haunted as some of the other places on this list, but it does really bring out some visceral reactions in people. Apparently, it's not too uncommon for guests to demand to leave early or to outright faint while walking through the museum. The owners refer to these cases as falling down ovations, which is a very funny turn of a phrase. Now, sadly, if you're listening to all of this and you're already pre-buying tickets for your next trip to LA, sadly, the museum is currently closed down. They are reopening though. They've also got a museum in New Orleans, since their collection of macabre knickknacks is so large it couldn't be contained to just one spot. When it reopens, I recommend you get out as soon as you can. It's a once-in-a-lifetime experience. And that's all for this video, my little ghouls and goblins. Thanks so much for watching. I've been Taylor. Creep on creeping on, and I'll see you in the next one.